Hey everyone, welcome to Tetsuo Tells a Story. I'm Tetsuo. So this episode theme is summer camp. Unfortunately, I've never been to summer camp. My family was just too poor to afford it. But I have gone to summer school though. So, anyways,
let us begin.
Story 1. I was working at summer camp as a night custodial and security. The hours were 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Because of this, I got used to being alone for long hours of time, and the nighttime weirdness. Everything is heightened at night. Noises spook you, even if you know what they are. Shadows are much spookier, and silence is much more ominous. After 3 months of on the job, I became very overwhelmed to all of that. So when I began to experience some actual paranormal stuff, I became a little unnerved. For example, I would see a humanoid shadow cross the road a large distance away in broad daylight during my day off. I would chalk it up as poor vision, but it was flash-like speed and soundlessly. My group of friends would set up a thermal cam in the chapel, and we would get hits of cold spots around 3 a.m. We would hear noises with no unknown sources from certain areas of the office building. The kitchen would always have doors opening and closing. Hands down, the creepiest moment though was towards the end of the summer. It was 5 a.m. in the morning, twilight, and I'm starting my end of the shift routine, patrolling on a golf cart. I drive up to the crossroads of one of the gym buildings, and I begin to go up and unlock the doors so campers can get in during the day. But before I can do that, however, I see a figure. It's not 20 feet away from me, and it's looking right at me. How do I describe it? Imagine Shadow Link from Zelda, but with no eyes, and a vague formlessness. Now make it a child size with long hair. I assumed it was a camper out of bed right before the morning wake-up call. As I began driving the cart, the figure moves like nothing I've ever seen. Faster than I can really track, and with no noise at all. And it runs right into the gym. I mean, into the wall of the gym building. Again, thinking perhaps I'm seeing things, and assuming it's a camper. I drive to the other side of the building to intercept it. Of course, when I arrive, there's nothing to see. I then start to get an uncomfortable feeling. Like when you stand in a room and someone kinda scares you. I said heck with my routine. I finished up quick and got to bed. I didn't even punch my card and told myself I'll just figure it out the next day. Story 2. I haven't really discussed this much with anyone, but after reading the encounters on this site, I was very motivated to enter my encounter as a 14-year-old boy in the YMCA camp, Camp Morgan, in the foothills of White Mountains in New Hampshire. I was in the Lumberjack Village, a village with wooden bases, 3-feet walls, and canvas tents over the bases. I had been in camp for several weeks, and the night of the encounter was a typical night in the mountains. Cool, clear, and quiet. I had another buddy in the tent with me, let's name him Bruce. Our village was in the woods, about 1/4 of a mile from base camp, where we ate and did activities. I awoke at 2 a.m. and heard something outside of my tent making heavy footsteps in the leaves in the forest. I heard brush being swept aside and a strange noise that I cannot really remember, except it was not a bear, raccoon, coyote, or anything else that I've ever heard before. I took my flashlight and awoke Bruce. He got very scared too. We opened the rainfly of the tent and got a bearing of the direction of the sound. We then flipped on our high-powered flashlights and beamed them over the area. But there was nothing that could be visually detected. Suddenly, leaves and branches started being pulled off trees and were thrown all around, almost like the wind was blowing them, but nothing could be seen. We got very scared and screamed for our counselors, who were in a tent about 60 feet from ours. At first, the two counselors, Jimmy and Jay, started yelling at us. They threatened us that if this was a joke, we were in deep trouble. But when Jim beamed his lights towards us and saw what we did, he yelled at us to get back in our tents and to stay quiet. Jim grabbed a shotgun from his tent, and Jay held a light. There were no tents in the area where the ruckus was taking place. He fired a 20-gauge shotgun from 20 feet away from the area where the trees were being torn apart. Tree barks and tree branches blew apart, but nothing was there. He fired again and again. Tree barks and leaves blasted into the air, but nothing. Suddenly, small to medium rocks went flying towards our tent, and one hit me right on the head. It hurt badly, but I was not cut. Rocks went flying in our direction several times and hit different tents. By now, all the kids were awake and were screaming in their tents. We heard something move back into the deep woods. There were strange sounds. It was very hard to describe, but it sounded like some kind of wailing of sorts. Then, it was dead quiet again. No one could sleep that night. By now, it was 3 a.m., and we made a large campfire. Jim called the state police and camp heads. They were all up here by 3:45 a.m. and took guns into the woods. All that was found was tree remains, lots of branches, and ripped apart saplings. We stayed awake and did not sleep for the rest of the day. The next several nights, the camp director camped out right in the middle of our village, with several counselors armed with shotguns. But this incident never occurred again. This is the honest truth, and I have never experienced anything as frightening in all my life again. Story 3. It was the year 2000 when I was 10 years old. My parents sent me to a 5-day summer camp in Huntsville, Ontario. This camp was definitely a Bible camp, and being raised without a religion, I felt uncomfortable there, but I got along with my peers. Me and 7 other girls were staying in the room on the far right, and there were 3 other rooms on the main floor. Upstairs is where the camp counselors bunked. The main floor had a very high ceiling, and near the top was a small square door, which attached to where the camp counselors were staying. I was staying along the right wall of the bottom bunk. On the 3rd night, me and my bunkmates were having a blast, just talking and telling jokes. But our camp counselor opened the little door on the top of the room and told us to be quiet, so we all went to bed. Out of nowhere, I hear Brianna yelling, "Cat! Cat, wake up now!" And being the light sleeper that I was, I immediately woke up. I didn't know how long I had slept for. I was facing the wall, so I turned around and see a black figure with long curly hair sitting at the ladder leading up to the top bunk on the bed in front of mine. The moonlight illuminated the entire room, and this figure was completely opaque, shaking her long curly hair. I looked around the room and noticed all the girls were accounted for and definitely awake. I stared at this thing for what seemed like an eternity. I was dead silent. I couldn't make a peep. I was completely terrified to the point where I couldn't blink or even move. I mean, I couldn't have done anything else. The thing was sitting right before my eyes. Then, this figure stands up and jumps off of the ladder and just stands at the edge of the bed for a moment. All the girls were screaming, "Cat, get out of there now!" I guess we made a lot of noise, and the camp counselors opened the little door and told us to keep it down. We had told her what we'd seen, and she came downstairs to investigate. She came into the room and told us, "There's nothing here. Your mind was just playing a trick on you. Back to bed. Now." All the girls, including myself in the room, were still pretty upset and scared, and just sat up in a bunk, talking about what we have seen. About 5 minutes later, we hear screams coming from the room directly across the hall from us. We all started crying again, and the camp counselor opened the little door and told us, "See what you've started? Everyone in the cabin is now scared." The camp counselor went to investigate, and we turned on our lights in our room and opened the door. We hear one of the girls in the room across from ours say, while crying, "Something lifted our bunk. Please, please don't make us stay here. It's gonna kill us." To which the counselor sternly responds with, "That's impossible. Now quiet down and go to bed. This is the last time I'm going to say this." After about 20 minutes of quietly talking, we all went to bed. Nothing else strange happened for the duration of the camp trip. I had exchanged phone numbers with the girls. About a week after the camp trip had ended, I had contacted Angel and Brianna and asked them if they remember that night. And they both said yes, and they said they'll never forget it. Thanks everyone for making it to the end of this episode. If you haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get updates. If you enjoyed these stories, please like and share it with family and friends. Do you have a story to tell? Let me know and I can read it to the world.
See you in the next episode. Thanks.